A boy confined to a wheelchair and a forgotten horse deemed useless form an unexpected bond that transforms them both. Their connection defies all expectations, leaving everyone in tears. Get ready for an unforgettable story of hope, resilience, and a bond with no limits. The car rattled down the dirt road as Emma glanced at her son, Lucas. In the back seat, his eyes were fixed on the window, watching the fields roll by. 6 months ago, a tragic accident left 12-year-old Lucas in a wheelchair, dimming the spark in his once bright eyes. "We're almost there," Emma said, trying to sound enthusiastic. Lucas didn't respond, his fingers tightening slightly on the armrest of his wheelchair. They arrived at a modest farm nestled between rolling hills. The paint on the barn was peeling, and the fences had seen better days. Emma had heard about this place from a friend, an equine therapy center, known for working wonders with children facing challenges. As they stepped out of the car, an older man approached them, his weathered face breaking into a kind smile. "You must be Emma and Lucas." "I'm Jack, the owner," he said, extending a hand. Emma shook it and gestured toward Lucas. "This is my son. I'm hoping this place can help him." Jack crouched down to meet Lucas's gaze. "Welcome, Lucas. I think you'll find some special friends here." Lucas's expression didn't change, but Jack didn't seem fazed. He stood and motioned toward the barn. "Come on, I'll show you round." Inside the barn, the scent of hay and wood filled the air. Horses of different sizes and colors stood in their stalls, some munching on hay, others watching. Curiously, Jack walked them down the aisle, introducing a few of the animals. Lucas remained silent, his gaze shifting only slightly. Then they reached the last stall. Inside stood a large pinto horse with striking patches of brown and white. His coat was dull, and a faint scar ran along his flank. Unlike the other horses, this one didn't approach the gate or nicker for attention. He stood still, his head low, as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. "This is Spirit," Jack said, his voice softer now. "He's had a tough life, just like you, Lucas." Lucas's eyes finally moved, locking onto the horse. There was something in Spirit's posture, something broken yet unyielding, that mirrored Lucas's own feelings. Emma frowned. "He doesn't look well." Jack nodded. "He's a rescue. Came here a few months ago. It's been a slow process, but there's something special about him. I think Lucas and Spirit might understand each other." For the first time, Lucas spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can I meet him?" Jack smiled. "Of course." Lucas rolled closer to the gate as Jack opened it. Spirit's ears flicked, and he turned his head slightly, his dark eyes meeting Lucas's. The boy extended a trembling hand, and after a moment, Spirit took a tentative step forward, his nostrils flaring as he sniffed Lucas's hand. Emma held her breath as the horse lowered his head further, allowing Lucas to stroke his muzzle. The boy's fingers moved hesitantly at first, then with more confidence. Jack leaned closer to Emma. "That's the first time Spirit has let anyone touch him since he arrived." Emma's heart swelled. For the first time in months, she saw a flicker of life return to her son's face. But as she watched the boy and the horse connect, she couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of something extraordinary, or just a fleeting moment of hope? As Lucas and Spirit shared their first moment of connection, Jack turned to Emma with a knowing look. "I think this might just be what they both need," he said. But neither of them could foresee how far this bond would take them, or the challenges they'd face along the way. The sun filtered through the barn's wooden slats the next morning, casting warm streaks of light over the hay-strewn floor. Lucas was already there, his wheelchair parked near Spirit's stall. Emma watched from the doorway, marveling at how her son, who had barely left his room for months, now seemed drawn to this barn and its wounded inhabitant. Jack approached quietly, his boots crunching against the ground. "He's an early riser, huh?" he said, nodding toward Lucas. Emma smiled faintly. "He hasn't been like this in so long. Sometimes, two broken souls find each other and heal in ways no one expects," Jack said, his gaze fixed on the boy and the horse. Inside the stall, Spirit stood quietly as Lucas brushed his coat with slow, deliberate strokes. The boy's hands trembled slightly, but there was a determination in his movements. Spirit, for his part, didn't flinch or shy away. His ears twitched now and then, as if listening to Lucas's unspoken words. "Good boy," Lucas murmured, his voice soft but steady. Jack stepped closer, carrying a small bucket of feed. "Want to help him eat?" Lucas hesitated, then nodded. Jack handed him the bucket, guiding his hands to hold it steady. Spirit sniffed the feed cautiously before taking a bite, his jaws working methodically. "He trusts you," Jack said. "That's no small thing." Lucas glanced up at Jack, his face serious. "Why was he hurt?" Jack sighed, crouching down so he was at Lucas's level. He was part of a herd on a rundown farm, neglected, left to fend for himself. By the time we got to him, he was barely standing. It took weeks just to get him to eat regularly. Lucas looked at Spirit, his expression unreadable. Then, almost to himself, he whispered, "I know how that feels." Over the next few days, Lucas spent every free moment with Spirit. He learned how to groom him properly, feed him, and even walk him around the paddock with Jack's guidance. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing hour, their silent understanding deepening in a way words could never capture. But Spirit wasn't the only one healing. Lucas's shoulders no longer sagged with defeat, and his voice, though still quiet, carried a new sense of purpose. Emma watched with a mixture of joy and disbelief as her son began to reemerge from the shell he had built around himself. One afternoon, Jack approached Lucas with a thoughtful expression. "How do you feel about riding him?" he asked. Lucas froze, his hands, which had been brushing Spirit's mane, stilled. I can't," he said, his voice barely audible. "Not yet," Jack agreed. "But the Spirit's strong enough to carry you now, if you're ready. We can take it slow, no rush." Lucas's gaze shifted to Spirit, who turned his head as if sensing the boy's hesitation. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, an unspoken question hanging in the air. Finally, Lucas nodded. "Okay, let's try." Jack and Emma worked together to set up a special mounting block. With Jack's steady hands and Spirit's calm patience, Lucas was carefully lifted onto the horse's back. Emma held her breath as her son settled into the saddle, his hands gripping the reins tightly. "How does it feel?" Jack asked. Lucas didn't answer right away. His body was stiff, his face tense. But then Spirit shifted slightly beneath him as if offering reassurance. Slowly, Lucas relaxed, a small, hesitant smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Higher than I thought," he said quietly. Jack chuckled. "That's the idea." As they led Spirit in a slow circle around the paddock, Emma wiped away a tear. For the first time in what felt like forever, her son looked free. But as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the farm, Jack's brow furrowed. He glanced toward the hills in the distance, his expression darkening. "Storm's coming," he muttered under his breath. As Spirit carried Lucas across the paddock, a distant rumble of thunder echoed in the air. Jack's warning hung heavy. The storm wasn't just in the sky. It was a reminder that their fragile progress was still at the mercy of forces beyond their control. The next morning, the storm clouds Jack had warned about began rolling in, casting a gray haze over the farm. The air was thick with humidity, and the distant rumble of thunder seemed to mirror the unease that lingered in Emma's heart. Lucas, however, appeared undeterred. For the first time in months, he woke up early on his own and wheeled himself to the barn before Emma even had a chance to finish her coffee. Inside, Spirit was restless. His ears flicked at every sound, and he shifted on his feet, his muscles tensing with each distant clap of thunder. Lucas noticed the change immediately. "What's wrong, boy?" he asked, his voice soft but concerned. Jack appeared, leaning against the barn door. "Horses can feel storms coming. It gets into their bones, making them uneasy." Lucas ran a hand down Spirit's neck, his touch steady despite the horse's agitation. "He's scared," Lucas said. Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe he's just testing you." Horses look to their riders for confidence. If you're calm, it helps them settle. Lucas nodded, though his jaw tightened slightly. The connection he'd built with Spirit was still new, and part of him doubted he could provide the reassurance the horse needed. But then Spirit nickered softly and nudged Lucas's hand, as if seeking his approval. Emma watched from the corner of the barn, her heart swelling with pride. This was the boy she'd feared. She had lost the one who faced challenges head-on, no matter how daunting they seemed. "Do you think he's ready for more?" Lucas asked, looking at Jack. Jack considered the question, his gaze sweeping over the boy and the horse. "Only one way to find out," he said, his voice calm but deliberate. "Let's saddle him up." Despite the looming storm, Jack helped Lucas onto Spirit's back. The boy's grip on the reins was firmer this time, and though his posture was still tentative, he exuded a quiet determination. Jack led them out of the barn and into the paddock, where the air was heavy with the promise of rain. "We'll take it slow," Jack said, walking alongside them. "Just a few laps to get him used to the idea of carrying you in open space." Lucas nodded, his focus entirely on Spirit as the horse began to move. His steps were careful and deliberate. Lucas adjusted to the rhythm, his body swaying slightly with each stride. The connection between them seemed almost tangible, a silent communication that needed no words. But as they completed the first lap, a loud crack of thunder split the air. Spirit reared slightly, his nostrils flaring as he tossed his head. Lucas froze, his grip tightening on the reins. "It's okay," Jack called out, his voice steady. "Breathe. Lucas, stay calm. Let him feel that you're in control." Lucas's heart raced, but he did as Jack instructed. He took a deep breath, his voice trembling, but firm as he spoke to Spirit. "It's okay, boy, I've got you." Spirit's ears flicked back, and though he snorted in protest, he eventually settled. Lucas loosened his grip on the reins slightly, his body relaxing. The horse began to move again, his steps more confident this time. Jack nodded in approval. "That's it. You're doing great." For the next hour, Lucas and Spirit worked together, gradually building trust. By the time the first drops of rain began to fall, they had completed several laps without incident. Lucas's face was flushed with pride as he dismounted, his legs trembling slightly from the effort. "You did well today," Jack said, clapping Lucas on the shoulder. "Both of you." As they led Spirit back into the barn, Emma stepped forward, unable to hide her excitement. "Lucas, that was amazing," she said, kneeling beside him. Lucas looked at her, his eyes shining. "It felt, I don't know, like I was free." But the moment was interrupted by a loud crash outside. Jack's face darkened as he glanced toward the sound that came from the north field. He said, already moving toward the door. Lucas and Emma followed as best they could. When they reached the edge of the field, their breaths caught. The storm had taken down a section of the fence, and one of the younger horses was running loose. Panicked by the commotion, "We've got to get him back," Jack said, his voice tense. "If he bolts toward the road, I can help," Lucas said, surprising. "Everyone, Lucas." "No," Emma protested. "It's too dangerous." But Jack looked at the boy thoughtfully, then at Spirit. "Maybe not. The Spirit trusts him. That might be enough to calm the colt." "Jack, he's just a kid," Emma said, her voice rising. "And he's shown more courage today than most grown men I know." Jack cut her off gently. Lucas's hands gripped his wheelchair tightly. "Let me try, Mom." Emma hesitated, torn between fear and the trust she had always placed in her son's determination. Finally, she nodded, her voice trembling. "Be careful." Jack helped Lucas onto Spirit's back once more. The horse stood still as if understanding the gravity of the situation. As the storm intensified, Lucas took a deep breath and urged Spirit forward toward the panicked colt. With the wind howling and rain pelting down, Lucas and Spirit moved steadily toward the frightened horse. But as they approached, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the field, and the colt reared, its eyes wild with fear. Could Lucas and Spirit bring him back before it was too late? The wind howled through the open field, whipping at Lucas's hair as he guided Spirit toward the panicked colt. The rain was now falling in heavy sheets, soaking them both. Spirit moved, with purpose, his steps deliberate despite the storm raging around them. Lucas's heart pounded in his chest, but he focused on steadying his breathing. Just as Jack had taught him, ahead of them, the colt skittered to a halt near a broken section of the fence, its ears flicking back and forth, its nostrils flaring with every crack of thunder. It was young and terrified, its movements erratic as it turned in circles, searching for an escape. Easy, boy, Lucas called out, his voice trembling but steady. We're not going to hurt you. Spirit stopped a few yards away from the colt, his body rigid but calm. Lucas leaned forward slightly, loosening his grip on the reins. It's okay. Spirit, show him he's safe. To Lucas's amazement, Spirit took a tentative step forward, lowering his head as if to reassure the younger horse. The colt froze, its wide eyes locked on Spirit. For a moment, the storm seemed to fade into the background, the connection between the two animals taking center stage. Lucas glanced back at Jack, who was standing near the barn with Emma. Jack gave him a small nod of encouragement, his face lined with worry, but also pride. Let's bring him in, Lucas murmured to Spirit. Slowly, Lucas urged Spirit closer. The colt's breathing slowed as Spirit nickered softly, his calm demeanor beginning to ease the younger horse's fear. Lucas extended a hand, his fingers trembling. Come on, boy, he said, his voice barely audible over the storm. The colt hesitated, its muscles taut. Then, as if sensing Lucas's sincerity, it took a step forward, followed by another. Lucas felt a wave of relief wash over him, but he didn't dare move too quickly. Spirit turned slightly, guiding the colt back toward the barn, with Lucas leading the way. As they reached the safety of the barn, Jack was already there with a lead rope. He secured the colt and led him into a stall, patting his side gently. You did it, he said, his voice filled with awe. Both of you. Lucas dismounted with Jack's help, his legs trembling as his feet touched the ground. He turned to Spirit, who was shaking off the rein, and ran a hand down his neck. Good boy, Lucas whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Emma rushed forward, throwing her arms around Lucas. You were so brave, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm so proud of you. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lucas smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up his face. I couldn't have done it without Spirit, he said. Jack crouched beside Lucas, his expression serious. That took courage, kid. The Spirit trusted you, and you trusted him. That's not something you can teach, it's something special. The storm finally began to subside, the thunder fading into the distance. The barn was quiet, except for the soft sounds of the horses settling in. Lucas sat beside Spirit's stall, resting his head against the wooden boards, his body exhausted, but his mind buzzing with a new sense of purpose. The next morning, the farm felt transformed. The air was fresh, the storm's aftermath painting the landscape in vibrant greens and golds. Jack approached Lucas with a saddle in hand. You've proven yourself out there, Jack said. How about we take Spirit for a proper ride today? Lucas hesitated, his gaze shifting to the saddle. Do you think I'm ready? Jack smiled. I think you've been ready for a while. You just didn't know it yet. With Emma watching nervously from the fence, Jack helped Lucas mount Spirit. This time, there was no hesitation, no lingering fear. Lucas sat tall in the saddle, his hands steady on the reins. Jack led them out into the open field, where the horizon stretched endlessly before them. This is where it all starts, Lucas, he said. You and Spirit, you've got something special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As they began to trot, Lucas felt the wind on his face and the steady rhythm of Spirit's movements beneath him. For the first time in months, he felt truly alive. As Lucas and Spirit rode across the field, Jack's words echoed in his mind. This is where it all starts. But neither of them could have imagined just how far this partnership would take them, and the challenges still waiting on the horizon. The next few weeks brought a new rhythm to Lucas's life. Every morning, he wheeled himself to the barn, eager to spend time with Spirit. The bond between them had grown unshakable. Jack, ever the mentor, began to challenge Lucas and Spirit with exercises designed to build trust, strength, and precision. But one afternoon, Jack approached Lucas with a different kind of challenge. There's a charity event coming up in town, he said, leaning against the barn door. An equestrian showcase. It's nothing fancy, but it might be the perfect chance for you and Spirit to show what you can do. Lucas looked up from brushing Spirit's coat, his brow furrowed. A competition? Jack chuckled. Not exactly. It's more of a demonstration, an exhibition. It's meant to inspire people and raise funds for equine therapy programs. Lucas hesitated. The idea of performing in front of a crowd made his stomach twist, but then he glanced at Spirit, who nickered softly, nudging his hand. Something about the horse's steady presence gave him courage. "Okay," Lucas said finally. "We'll do it." For the next few weeks, Lucas and Spirit trained tirelessly. Jack set up a small obstacle course in the paddock, teaching Lucas how to guide Spirit through tight turns and over small jumps. It wasn't easy. Lucas's balance wavered at times, and Spirit occasionally balked at unfamiliar commands. But they pushed through, learning to trust each other more deeply with every session. Emma watched from the sidelines, her heart swelling with pride and worry in equal measure. Her son, once withdrawn and defeated, now carried himself with a quiet determination that left her in awe. The day of the event arrived, and the small-town arena buzzed with activity. Riders and their horses milled about, the air filled with the sounds of hooves on dirt and murmurs of conversations. Lucas sat quietly near Spirit's stall, his hands gripping the wheels of his chair tightly. "Are you nervous?" Jack asked, crouching beside him. Lucas nodded. "A little. What if I mess up? What if the Spirit gets scared?" Jack smiled. "It's not about being perfect, Lucas. It's about showing people what's possible when you don't give up. You and Spirit have already done that. As their turn approached, Emma knelt beside Lucas, adjusting his jacket. "You've got this," she said softly. "I'm so proud of you." When they entered the arena, the crowd fell silent. Lucas guided Spirit to the center, his hands steady on the reins. The announcer introduced them, his voice echoing through the space. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lucas and Spirit, a pair who remind us all of the power of determination and trust." The routine began slowly, with Lucas guiding Spirit through a series of basic maneuvers. The crowd watched intently, their murmurs of admiration growing louder as the pair moved with precision and grace. But then came the final challenge, a small jump set near the center of the arena. Lucas hesitated, his heart pounding. This was the part that had given them the most trouble in practice. "You can do this," he whispered to Spirit, his voice trembling but firm. As they approached the jump, the crowd held its breath. Lucas leaned forward slightly, his hands guiding Spirit with care. And then, in one fluid motion, the horse cleared the obstacle, his hooves landing solidly on the other side. The arena erupted in applause. Lucas felt a rush of exhilaration, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. He patted Spirit's neck, his voice choked with emotion. "We did it." Jack and Emma were waiting for them at the gate, their faces beaming with pride. "You were incredible," Emma said, pulling Lucas into a tight hug. But as they basked in the moment, a man approached, his expression thoughtful. He introduced himself as Mark Caldwell, a representative from a renowned equine therapy foundation. "I've never seen anything quite like that," Mark said. "Lucas, your connection with Spirit is extraordinary. Have you ever considered taking this further?" Lucas glanced at Jack, then back at Mark. "What do you mean?" Mark smiled. "There's a national program that showcases stories like yours, real partnerships between horses and riders that inspire others. I'd like to nominate you and Spirit." Lucas's eyes widened. The idea of taking their story beyond this small-town arena was both thrilling and terrifying. But as he looked at Spirit, standing tall and proud beside him, he felt a sense of possibility he hadn't known in years. As Lucas and Spirit walked out of the arena, the applause still ringing in their ears, one question lingered. Were they ready to take their bond to the next level and share their journey with the world? The days after the showcase were a whirlwind. Mark Caldwell had wasted no time arranging for Lucas and Spirit to be part of the National Equine Therapy Program. The invitation brought excitement to the farm, but also uncertainty for Lucas. It was a chance to inspire others, but it also meant stepping far out of his comfort zone. "I don't know if I'm ready," Lucas admitted to Jack one evening as they stood outside Spirit's stall. Jack leaned against the wooden gate, his expression calm. "I didn't think you were ready for the storm or the showcase either, but you proved yourself more than once. This is just the next step." Lucas looked at Spirit, who nickered softly and nudged his arm. The horse's steady presence had become his anchor, and at that moment, Lucas knew he couldn't turn back. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "Let's do it." The preparation was grueling. Jack intensified their training, introducing new maneuvers and obstacles to prepare Lucas and Spirit for the complexities of performing on a larger stage. Meanwhile, Emma worked tirelessly to arrange travel logistics, her quiet determination a testament to her unwavering support for her son. The day of their first national appearance arrived in the form of a sprawling arena packed with thousands of spectators. The sight of the massive crowd made Lucas's stomach churn. "There are so many people," he said, his voice barely audible. Emma knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "They're here to see you because your story matters. You've already won, Lucas, just by being here." Jack joined them, his presence steady as ever. "Remember what I told you. It's not about being perfect, it's about showing people what's possible." As Lucas and Spirit entered the arena, the murmurs of the crowd quieted, replaced by an almost reverent silence. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lucas and Spirit, a story of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his horse." Lucas guided Spirit to the center of the arena, his hands steady on the reins despite the nervous energy coursing through him. The routine began with simple movements, each step carefully calculated. Spirit responded to every cue with precision, their connection palpable even from the stands. The crowd watched in awe as the routine grew more complex. Lucas directed Spirit through tight turns, weaving between cones with an elegance that belied the horse's powerful frame. But the true test came with the final maneuver, a series of jumps that required both strength and trust. As they approached the first jump, Lucas felt a familiar flicker of doubt, but Spirit moved confidently beneath him as if to remind him of everything they had overcome together. With a surge of courage, Lucas gave the command, and Spirit leaped gracefully over the obstacle. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the arena. Lucas barely had time to process the first jump before they approached the second, and then the third. With each successful leap, his confidence grew until the final jump loomed before them. This one was higher than the rest, deliberately challenging. Lucas took a deep breath, his voice steady as he spoke to Spirit. "We've got this." Spirit gathered himself, muscles coiling like a spring. Then, with a powerful push, he soared over the jump, landing cleanly on the other side. The arena exploded with applause, the sound overwhelming in its intensity. Lucas felt tears sting his eyes as he leaned forward, wrapping his arms around Spirit's neck. "You did it, boy," he whispered. "We did it." Back at the gate, Emma and Jack were waiting, their faces glowing with pride. Mark Caldwell approached his expression with one of sheer admiration. "You've inspired everyone here today," he said. "Your bond with Spirit is something truly extraordinary." Lucas dismounted with Jack's help, his legs trembling, but his heart full. As he looked out at the crowd, now on their feet in a standing ovation, he realized something profound. This journey wasn't just about him or Spirit. It was about hope that even in the darkest moments, something beautiful could emerge. As Lucas and Spirit left the arena to thunderous applause, a reporter approached them with a single question. "What's next for you two?" Lucas glanced at Spirit, a smile spreading across his face. "Whatever comes our way." The applause from the national arena echoed in Lucas's mind long after they returned home. The energy of the crowd, the admiration of strangers, and the connection he had felt with Spirit during their performance were memories he would carry forever. But as life settled back into its quiet rhythm on the farm, Lucas couldn't shake the question the reporter had asked him. "What's next for you two?" For Lucas, the journey wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about what Spirit had given him: strength, hope, and a second chance at life. And now he wanted to give that gift to others. One crisp morning, Lucas sat at the kitchen table with Emma and Jack. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady. "What if we start a program here? A place where kids like me can work with horses like Spirit, people who feel broken, who need a second chance." Emma's eyes softened, tears brimming. "That's a beautiful idea, Lucas, but it's a big responsibility." Jack nodded, leaning back in his chair. "It's not easy, kid. You'll need resources, people to help, and a lot of patience." Lucas looked at them both, his expression resolute. "I know it won't be easy, but Spirit and I didn't get this far just to stop now. I want to share what he taught me. Over the next few months, the farm transformed. With Jack's guidance and Emma's tireless efforts, they built new paddocks, repaired the barn, and reached out to the community for support. The program, named Second Chances, began with just a few kids who had faced physical and emotional challenges much like Lucas had. The first day of the program was one Lucas would never forget. A young girl named Sophie, quiet and withdrawn, arrived with her parents. She reminded Lucas of himself just months earlier, hesitant, unsure, and weighed down by fear. He introduced her to Spirit, who nickered softly and lowered his head toward her. Sophie's eyes lit up as she reached out to touch Spirit's muzzle. It was a moment of connection, small but profound, and Lucas saw in her the same spark he had felt that first day in the barn. The program grew steadily. Word spread about the incredible bond between Lucas and Spirit, and soon families from neighboring towns began visiting the farm. Each child who came through Second Chances brought their own struggles, but they left with something more: confidence, hope, and the reminder that even in their darkest moments, they were never alone. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lucas stood in the paddock with Spirit. The horse's coat gleamed in the fading light, a testament to the journey they had shared. Lucas ran a hand along Spirit's neck, his voice quiet. "You changed my life, you know." Spirit nickered softly, his ears flicking back as if to acknowledge the words. Lucas smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. Emma and Jack joined him, their faces glowing with pride. "You've done something incredible here, Lucas," Emma said, wrapping an arm around her son. "I hope you know that." Jack nodded. "Not many people your age would take on something like this. You've got a gift, Lucas. Don't ever forget it." As they stood together, watching the children laugh and play in the paddock with the horses, Lucas felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. His journey with Spirit had started as a desperate attempt to heal, but it had become so much more. Together, they had created something that would outlast them both, a legacy of hope and resilience. Lucas wheeled himself to the barn one last time that evening, the stars shining brightly above. He paused at Spirit's stall, where the horse stood, quietly, his head lowered in rest. "Good night, Spirit," Lucas whispered. "Tomorrow, we'll keep going one step at a time." As he turned to leave, Spirit nickered softly, the sound carrying through the quiet night. It was a promise unspoken, understood. Whatever came their way, they would face it together. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope in their life. Together, we can spread the message that second chances are always possible.